great. Hey, listen, why don't we do this real quick? So Dylan, could you answer really quick the question, then we'll get to Bernard's question. Is there a requirement for how large your water collection reservoirs need to be on the Big Island?
There's no requirement, because it's one of those things, like nobody requires you to buy toilet paper. Like you kind of figure it out yourself, right? Like, I mean,
but there's no regulation. There's no regulation.
There's no regulation. No, I mean, there's definitely best practices. And when you talk to a contractor who will build you a catchment system, they're gonna talk to you about, how many members in your family, kind of what are your habits, and you'll figure it out. But normally, like, you want like a 10,000 gallon tank. Like you can go down to like 7,000, but if you go down to like 5, unless you're in a really rainy area that rains a lot, you want to be able to make sure that, if you got 30 days of no rain, that you're going to be able to survive that. And then of course you can always get water delivered, but yeah, no requirements or regulation.
Okay. No requirements per se, but there's rules of thumb, and you need to talk with your contractor. Scott, go ahead.
I actually just dealt with this a little bit with a buddy of mine who he ran into insurance issues when it came to this, that the insurance company wanted a certain amount, because if the house caught on fire and the fire department needed to tap the water to help put it out, they want a certain amount, and then the numbers didn't even make sense. Now, not that it was necessarily a requirement, but there was some kind of conditions with the insurance component. So there are some various variables that could come into play that you probably want to look at, make sure of before you go down that path of putting something in.
That's a really good point. Scott, when you mentioned that, I got to tell you, when we, my wife and I, we lived on the Big Island in the Puna district in like 91, I think. And I think we lasted for about 9 months before we realized it was not the place for us. But so we're out there, we're at Dylan, we were in the Hawaiian Beaches subdivision. And so we got the,
that was the Wild West back then. I mean,
it was, man. It was, man. It was. Isn't it still the Wild West anymore? Pahoa's not. It's still wild, right? Or maybe has it gentrified? I don't know. But it was the Wild West back then. Quick story. So I remember driving around, and we noticed like there was all these lots had a bunch of like junker cars in them, all junker cars, and and all of them had the hood and the trunks were open, and we're driving like, what is going on over here? And what we found out that it's not just abandoned cars. No, it was cars that they were growing pakalolo, growing marijuana in the hood and in the trunk of the car. And that's why the lids were up, so that when the helicopters would come on over, they would just run around and close the hoods and close the trunks of all the cars, so they wouldn't get busted. That was back when pot was illegal. But anyway, Wild West. Anyway, boy, did I get off track. So so anyway, I hope you're all enjoying that little short story. So we're in the house, and then we're like, hey, where's the fire hydrants? There's no such thing. There's no such thing as fire hydrants, And so, and to your point, Scott and Dylan, if you're going to have a catchment system, yeah, that water that's sitting in your catchment tank is going to potentially be used to put the fire out of your house if your house catches on fire. And that was kind of one of the interesting things. And the other interesting thing was we talked to our neighbors, and we said, hey, what days does the garbage truck come by to pick up the trash? And they said, well, you can go and take out the trash any day you want. I'm like, really? It's like, yeah. You have to put it in your car and drive like, 20 miles down and dump it off at the thing. Like, oh, okay. A lot of things we take for granted. And it's just like, normal country living. But there you go.
Same thing when I lived in Puako for all those years. The Puako transfer station's right there. If you want to take your trash, you're putting it in the back of your truck and driving it up.
Yeah, so fancy cars, not a good idea. You don't want to be putting a pile of trash in the back of the Bentley. It's not going to work. Not going to work.
By the way, to your fire hydrant story, there's when looking at development projects, and I had some guys get shut down on this because they didn't do their due diligence. But if you're in the city municipal, component, Oahu, for example, and you want to go and build, if the fire hydrant is too far away from the lot, you're required to sprinkler your house, which can add significant costs. I think it's 150 feet distance. If you're over that, then you're going to have to sprinkler your house. It can add significant cost to, you're talking 20 grand probably at that point to have to do that. And complexity and maintenance and all that kind of other overhead. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Wild one. All right.